Central Illinois on the record. Governor Rauner is calling it a crisis, what the state's chief executive is saying about the budget stalemate. Plus, cutting costs at schools has one district considering a new class schedule. What was decided about a 4-day week. And Dennis Hastert is incarcerated. What we know about his time behind bars.
Now, from your local election headquarters, this is Central Illinois on the record.
Welcome to Central Illinois on the record. I'm Paul Cicchini. We start in Pontiac, where more than half a dozen people were injured in Wednesday's tornado that's since been classified as an EF2, meaning it was very strong. Governor Rauner made a stop in the community Friday, surveying the damage and discussing how the state would be lending a hand despite the ongoing budget impasse. Rauner says the good news is that any money that would be available to help Pontiac is not tied to that stalemate in Springfield. He spoke outside a heavily damaged Shell gas station, one of the hardest hit structures in the community.
We've got to make sure that our small business owners get back on their feet as soon as possible to help the economy and preserve jobs. And we do have programs. They're not extensive, but here in the Department of Commerce and the Illinois State Government, we have low-interest loans available to small businesses that are impacted by these natural disasters. After visiting Pontiac, Rauner made 3 stops in Peoria, which included a tour of the National Guard base. The 2017 fiscal year starts on Friday. It will mark the beginning of the second consecutive year without a spending plan. CIOTR's Hannah Hilliard was there last week when the state comptroller made a stop in Peoria, giving a grim forecast of what's ahead.
Illinois Comptroller Leslie Munger says she doesn't know what else to do.
Here I am again saying everything I told you, it's happened, and now it's going to get worse.
She's crunched the numbers, counted them again, and she can't make it any clearer.
It's like having $100 in your checking account, looking at a pile of bills in front of you to pay right now that total about $8,000, having another $2,000 worth of bills coming in the mail any day because you've made promises to make payments, you just don't have those bills in your hand yet, and opening up a credit card statement and seeing a bill for $116,000 that you have to make a monthly payment on.
Munger made multiple stops in Central Illinois to urge lawmakers to pass a balanced budget and do so now.
These self-inflicted traumas are unacceptable, they are unnecessary, and they really must end now.
But Munger's afraid legislators don't understand the magnitude of the problem.
I'll tell you, some of them say, well, don't you have a stash somewhere of money that you can just pull? I'm like, no, there's no stash.
Back in April, Munger put lawmakers' paychecks in line with the rest of the bills, meaning they are delayed about 3 months.
Over the past month, I have heard from many legislators on both sides of the aisle on how difficult this is on them, how terrible I am for doing this.
With only days left before the start of the next fiscal year, she hopes this will kick them into gear.
There is a way forward. We just have to have people who will step up and do it.
While the stop was a media conference, it was in council chambers at City Hall, but it was not attended by any of the area's state lawmakers. The House canceled session again last week, this as the governor fears the state is headed toward crisis. Illinois has less than just a few days to reach a budget before the start of 2017's fiscal year. Rauner is accusing Democratic House Speaker Michael Madigan of wanting a government shutdown.
Personally believe some across the aisle want that crisis and want a government shutdown, so I have to go hat in hand, and at which point they'd say, oh, well then you have to do this and this and this spending way beyond our means. That's not fair.
In a statement, Speaker Madigan said the bipartisan working groups of legislators would meet a few times this week. School leaders in Streator are working to bring the elementary school district out of financial crisis. Streator Elementary School District 44 has been certified as being in, quote, financial difficulty by the state after more than 2 years with a budget deficit. The school board was asked last week to consider switching to a 4-day school week as a way to cut costs. The board voted against the idea, but board members still need to agree on a 3-year deficit reduction plan mandated by the state by the end of the month.
If we put this 3-year plan into place, we will achieve what the State Board of Education wants us to do, and that's have a balanced operating budget within 3 years.
The plan is contingent on the state passing a budget, of course, and without a budget, the district could run out of money by February. The board is meeting on July 12th to continue working on the deficit reduction plan. Lawmakers may not be in session, but work is being done on a funding plan for K-12 schools. A bill Representative Bill Mitchell is pushing for would fully fund general state aid. If passed, it would be the first time in 7 years schools would get what they deserve. Superintendents from Macon County gathered at Meridian Community School to talk about how their districts are getting by. Many will be able to stay open through the first semester, but worry about that second half of the school year.
That would be, like us calling school off because, we don't have our budget together. So you just keep your kids at home, parents, and when we get it together, you can send them. It's unacceptable.
Representative Mitchell says his K-12 education bill is supported by the governor. Another stopgap bill he's pushing would keep the government running for 6 months. Superintendents in Peoria County sending their budget concerns to Springfield. The regional superintendent wrote to the governor and other elected leaders calling for state funding to return to schools. The letter describes the problems facing all of the districts in the county, including the possibility of closing doors, since most districts will have only enough money for 1 semester.
We need consistency and we need predictability. This simply not having a budget doesn't help us prepare what we need to do to get ready for students and families.
The superintendent says several districts are looking for ways to borrow money until the state funding is restored. A big decision for officials in the Midland School District as the school board accepts a bid to demolish Midland Elementary School. That winning bid came in at $190,000. Work will begin August 8th, and it will take about 4 weeks to tear down the school. Officials shut down the building for several weeks after the discovery of lead. To make matters worse, crews also found asbestos inside the school. Heartland Community College moving forward with a tentative budget. The Board of Trustees approved a $33 million spending plan at a meeting last week. It's dependent on the state passing a budget in the next few months, however. The school says keeping state aid in its budget plan is a statement for the college.
This is in recognition that we do feel that there's an obligation there for some money to come forward, and we would expect that to happen eventually.
The college is expected to pass a final budget in September if there still is not a state budget by then. The school says it will take a close look at what can be trimmed without changing a student's classroom experience. Well, they protect our waters and state parks, but conservation police are dealing with a big problem thanks to the budget impasse. CIOTR's Kelsey Gibbs explains.
I've been out here on this lake for this will be my 3rd year out here on this lake.
Any chance Blaine Schnitker gets out, he's enjoying the water.
I would say 99% of the time I'm out here doing, bass fishing or cat fishing.
But he does notice that sometimes the water can go from calm to wild in a matter of seconds.
People doing silly stuff all the time. I see them going through the no wake areas, especially over there by the 55 bridge.
When it comes to Lake Springfield, the city does a big part in keeping an eye out for lawbreakers. But the DNR Conservation Police protects most lakes and state parks.
It's when all the young kids are out drinking, partying, and just driving around as fast as they can. So, of course I would love somebody to be patrolling the area a lot more to make the lakes a lot safer.
The state has nearly 140 conservation officers, but their jobs could be in jeopardy.
Illinois Conservation Police do spend a lot of time on the water in the summer. We do have a concern. Conservation Police obviously need fuel for their patrol boats, and given the budget impasse, that's becoming a problem.
This isn't the first time the Department of Natural Resources had to deal with the state's troubling finances. Last year, it feared layoffs for more than 30 police officers.
We want to make sure that our officers are out enforcing boat safety regulations, doing boat inspections. If there is a boat accident, investigating that accident.
DNR says what it needs is a budget.
That's why it would be very important for Conservation Police for a stopgap budget to be approved. Governor.
As for Schnitker, he just wants to see the lakes protected.
I hope to see more, conservation out here. Most definitely.
The DNR says because of the warmer weather, more officers will be on patrol. Well, no state budget means an end for road construction in Illinois. The Department of Transportation says all projects will end in less than 2 weeks unless lawmakers approve a budget or stopgap bill. That includes the project on I-74 and 155 near Morton. It was supposed to come to an end this year, but if work is stopped, of course, it could last longer. Over 800 other projects in the state face a similar situation, meaning over 25,000 workers would be without a job.
Without a budget, we have no ability to pay contractors, and until we do, there's nothing that we can do to keep those projects moving.
IDOT says it will take a few weeks to make sure each construction site will be safe for drivers before those sites are abandoned. Medicaid reimbursement payments are being delayed. Until a budget is signed into law, pharmacies across the state will have to wait. The Illinois Retail Merchants says 60% of a pharmacy's income is Medicaid reimbursements. Those in the business say the Medicaid cuts could be as much as $400 million.
But anytime your balance sheet's owed $250 million or $100 million, it's a lot of money. But when you're an individual owner of let's say, a medicine shop in town, and you have to go to the bank and try to get a line of credit, and the bank isn't willing to give it because they don't know when you're going to get paid by the state, that's a problem.
Advocates say if the budget impasse continues, some pharmacies may have to decline Medicaid patients. Still ahead, a big win for Big Tobacco, why the Supreme Court handed smokers in Illinois a loss. And a former House Speaker behind bars, what we know about Dennis Hastert's incarceration. Dennis Hastert, former House Speaker and admitted child molester, is behind bars. He was charged with banking crimes for paying hush money to a man to cover up sex abuse while he was a teacher and high school wrestling coach in Illinois. Hastert was sentenced to 15 months at the Rochester Federal Medical Center in Minnesota. He is expected to be living with other sex offenders, so he is not singled out. 4 gun control measures up for a vote, 4 failures in the U.S. Senate. They were proposed following the massacre at a nightclub in Orlando. Senators from Illinois were quick to react to the failure of the bills. Republican Mark Kirk issues a statement saying, quote, "I'm disappointed we could not advance Feinstein-Kirk legislation to keep weapons out of the hands of suspected terrorists or bipartisan bills to finally close the gun show loophole and to stop the gun trafficking and straw purchasing that fuels Chicago gangs." He went on to say the horror of gun violence is robbing us of an entire generation. Democratic Senator Dick Durbin also weighing in, saying, quote, "Too many guns are getting into the hands of dangerous people, and that must change. We won't stop pushing these reforms until they do." Political analysts say even though the National Rifle Association agrees suspected terrorists should not have access to guns, finding a proposal that can pass has been difficult since Democrats and Republicans approach the problem differently. Well, in Illinois, things could be different. State lawmakers want to make it harder for people making terrorist threats to get a gun. As Matt Porter explains, they're trying to balance safety, of course, with the Second Amendment.
The fact that this is the biggest in U.S. history, 49 people killed, I think that's definitely making a great impact.
The topic of new gun regulations has been a hot one at this Springfield gun range. Staff say the Orlando shooting has brought issues including background checks back into the spotlight.
I don't mind having one done on myself if I want to purchase a firearm. I expect that from my customers when they purchase a firearm from me.
At the state capitol, lawmakers from both sides are considering allowing state police to take guns away from those who make terrorist threats that can endanger one or more lives.
We need to make sure that people's rights are protected, but we also need to make sure that the public is protected from any of these mass shootings.
Republicans say the bill will also provide citizens an avenue to appeal their case.
If they would have their FOID cards taken away, that they have the ability to go to court, or they have the ability to, through administration, to go back and get that reinstated if they're able to.
Other gun advocates say the attention after Orlando is misplaced.
Definitely needs to be something done about it, but it's not as much of a gun control issue as it is recognizing that this is terrorist action, terrorist warfare on our home front.
This bill has support from House Republicans and the State Rifle Association. If it gets called as is, there is a chance it could pass. The U.S. Supreme Court deals a blow to Illinois smokers who wanted to reinstate a major judgment against Philip Morris. The justices did not issue a statement, but their decision leaves in place an Illinois Supreme Court ruling in favor of the tobacco giant. That ruling set aside a more than $10 billion judgment against Philip Morris. The smokers went to court because they had a problem with an Illinois justice they say benefited from tobacco money during his retention election. Illinoisans looking to buy health insurance as part of the Affordable Care Act will have to wait until August to find out how much it will cost. The Chicago Tribune reports the State Department of Insurance won't release the rate information until August 1st. That's about a month after the agency reviews the information. Insurance companies submitted their plans in April. Advocates say some insurance plans could cost more next year. Still to come, City Council in Central Illinois considers an e-cigarette ban. What was decided in Bloomington. But first, video gaming fees in the Twin Cities? What business owners had to say about the proposal.
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
Business owners in Bloomington feeling a sense of relief. Bloomington City Council will not pursue a fee for video gaming machines. The council's been considering a $500 fee for each machine to help cover extra policing efforts and legal costs. Bar owners say the fee was too high, and the city wasn't being clear enough about how the extra money would be used. The council decided to table the discussion indefinitely.
The ordinance, when it was enacted back in 2012, didn't carry a fee, and that was my whole issue with this coming up again. If they wanted to have a fee, as Mr. Jordan stated, they should have put it in the original ordinance back in 2012.
Council voted in April to increase liquor license fees by more than 50%. City of Bloomington also looking into banning electronic cigarettes. At the Committee of the Whole meeting last week, aldermen discussed banning e-cigarettes in all public places, just like regular cigarettes. Several council members were in favor of the idea, citing health factors and the fact that certain businesses have already put a ban in place. Others were hesitant to impose the ban on private businesses, saying it should be the owner's decision.
Businesses kind of decide what their policy is going to be, and then people could either go there and do business or not do business.
Businesses are taking this on their own. I'd just like to see it be consistent throughout the city.
Council decided it will consider a ban on e-cigarettes on city-owned property only in the near future. Well, the health department in DeWitt County is making cuts to its mental health program. It affects people living in the Clinton area. The county is shutting down its primary provider of outpatient mental health services, which serves about 500 people in Clinton. Cuts are being blamed on the state budget crisis. About 2/3 of its funding come from state and federal dollars. A city council decides whether to keep the water running at a local prison. We'll tell you how much that facility owes. And controversy and criticism. A look at Uber's first year in the River City.
You're watching Central Illinois on the record.
It's been a year since Peoria City Council approved Uber in the River City. CIOTR Shane Gustafson has more on the continuing controversy and criticism of the ride-sharing service.
David Smezrud started driving for Uber last year.
Just keep going.
And so far, he's given more than 700 rides all over Central Illinois.
I typically drive on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, and I'm staying pretty busy.
Staying busy with people asking for a lift almost nonstop when he's out. Smezrud says it's proof of Uber's growing success. He tells me approving it last year was clearly the right decision.
They can just request a ride from their smartphones using the app, and it's a little more affordable, I think.
I really enjoyed it. The guy was cool, and it wasn't expensive, and it was efficient.
But Uber being cheaper and more convenient, according to some, isn't sitting well with Peoria's taxi industry.
I see no reason why TNC drivers should be able to operate vehicles that are not quarterly mechanically inspected, such as is required for taxi cabs.
That's how many taxi veterans felt last year, and they're sticking to original concerns brought to City Council. Most companies wouldn't talk on camera Tuesday, but told me on the phone Uber is hurting their bottom line, with more people choosing to push a button instead of make a call. They too say it's because of convenience. But drivers like Smezrud don't deny that convenience is key.
Well, I think that's exactly what's happening. Uber is coming in and taking business away from the taxi companies.
But he says the new competition isn't a bad thing. It just gives people better options when riding.
People want cleaner cars, they want more convenience, and I think they want to save a little bit of money too.
I think it's safer too, like considering like the downtown life and things like that for people needing to get places.
We did reach out to city leaders to get their thoughts. Our calls were not returned. An activist group says Peoria city leaders should think twice before doing anything at a local park. The Friends of Riverfront Park held a news conference last week expressing concern that if the city moves forward with the plans for the River Trail Apartments, any archaeological material on the site could be lost. Group members don't know for sure if there's anything historical or of substance there, but they think it could be an archaeological gold mine.
This site is likely the site of the first French settlement in Peoria, and before that, Native American settlements.
Now, the group says the city already did an archaeological study at the park, but they say it was inadequate. Mount Sterling City Council votes against a plan to shut off the water to its prison. Many workers at its correctional center attended the meeting last week, calling on council to keep the water running. The town of 1,900 people is owed almost $400,000 for water service. The vote was unanimous after council members were told about a way to have the debt purchased by a private entity. Uncovering history, what was found in a time capsule in Tazewell County. But first, a courthouse dedication. While the local state's attorney says it's a commitment to justice.
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
A big week for the folks at the Tazewell County Courthouse. They rededicated the building with a special ceremony on the courthouse lawn. The event was a day after officials opened a time capsule and put its contents on display. State's Attorney Stu Umholtz says the ceremony represents a commitment to justice.
It's an opportunity for the community to rededicate ourselves to what Lady Justice behind me represents, and that is as a stability for our community, for the rule of law, for order, for responsibility.
The public got a chance to tour the courthouse following that ceremony. As we mentioned, members of the Tazewell County's Centennial Committee presented a time capsule last week. It was recovered from a cornerstone at the Tazewell County Courthouse. The contents included old newspapers, a pen made from wood from a previous courthouse, photos of an old courthouse demolition, and court records.
The time capsule is from 1914. They placed it in the cornerstone as they were building the building. The building wasn't actually finished until 1916 and dedicated in 1916.
The contents were available for public viewing, followed by that rededication ceremony for the courthouse. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Central Illinois on the Record. Of course, you can stay in touch with us using social media. Connect with CIOTR and me on Facebook and Twitter by using the hashtag CIOTR, and we'll see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of WMBD, WYZZ, or Nexstar Broadcasting Group.